Only the strong survive. So I take a moment to make a memoir of wisdom and understanding that we in lust are born in James 1:15 and are with a spiritual wellspring that was once and still is a part of the star that feeds off of that spiritual wellspring. And whether or not we choose to work for everlasting life in that star or finally grow into the moral ethic of man-made law, war, conflict. Say, for instance, let me explain to you that the livestock sacrifice that Caesar had taken over in Odin's reigns and all of the covenants that his spiritual child Beowulf made, including Caesar, who finally took over the spiritual child Beowulf of Odin. Beowulf and Delphi, who gave birth to Caesar, who took over the kingdom. Livestock sacrifice and whatever relief in law, government, strip clubs, military. This is the irony of warring in the households when it says, I have come to divide the household. I have come to turn mother against daughter, fathers against sons, brothers against brothers, and so on. I have come to destroy you utterly. I call the law because this is the census and this is the practice. I call the law and they come, especially if you hate your children and so on, they come and collect their prize, winnings out of the darkness, the dark union that came about us in livestock sacrifice, be it any kind of race or religion, from white to black to Mexican to Muslim to Spanish. It doesn't matter. Any race or religion that chooses their ways. It is said that the favored king, the rejected stone of the Freemason builders or carpentries and smiths, um, he is the one to grind down the stones that have fallen until it has reached a purity state of the mental wisdom that God had gifted his favored archangel to speak and rise up in his mental impression, which is the image of how one sees itself in the ark, able to see into heaven or able to enter into heaven for salvation and redemption. The irony of fighting in relationships when you have children. Children are neglected, and in some cases, they're hated. And being still attached to God in that spiritual wellspring to the star. That lawman, he comes in and he picks up his prize. He takes all that God can't be a part of world conflict. It is not a part of heaven, nor is it the majority part of hell until the vile are exalted for the wicked to walk on every side up there in the ark until and the practice is to turn the ark dark. Every alpha male female species, being it from the creepy crawly on its belly to the birds, the bees, the bugs, the fly, the livestock, the creatures, the sea creatures, until the ark is turned dark and no longer has a light to actually see God and his will, like the prophets had already come in Jesus Christ and explained before consummating death from God to be childbirth in the woman. And in doing so, the conflict in the law being the vainglory of Jesus Christ for the sacrificial purpose of freedom, freedom for themselves, and creating law and freedom for themselves. I'm not saying it's wrong to do that. I'm not saying it's right to do that. I'm saying that every American citizen under a constitution has a right to know that this is the practice of a church. And in this practice of a church, in America, a free country, a land of the brave, a house of the free, and a garden full of riches in the wellspring to salvage unto God for everlasting life. I'm saying that because the church practice is like this in the majority of uh, ethnicity coming from foreign countries. And the more, these are some of the letters that I've written to some governmental entities, the more and more we populate in this world, I feel that the Constitution should be reset and discussed in a manner of church and law. And if you want to make America great again, it begins with the law because that is the vainglory in everybody's house. However, the matter, warring about it is not the proper way to discuss making America great again. The law has a practice that must take place, or we will all be out of some distorted manner crazy. We will be raping and pillaging, murderers and killers, and eventually it will get out of hand. So the law has to take place, and this is the irony of it. The church that takes part in it a second round after being punished by the law, you also are interrogated by the spiritual law, and it's a improper method of theft if you can't overcome it with a gladness eternally to know God. Even in persecution, the said terminology of persecution, I don't call it a persecution, I call it strength. I call it a way to mentally become stronger. Any any dealings with any kind of spirit from light, dark, red, yellow, blue, green, I don't care if it's a pipefish or a bird or a dragon or a sea creature or a critter that crawls on his belly. If it's a part of me, I am blessed to have wisdom because I had offered to God fuel for his stars. He had offered to me wisdom that kept me alive in his great grace, able to purify and purify and purify and purify and purify until I had taken that stone that had to be broken down and turned into a dust, until I had taken it and put it into a soluble state in order to enter back into heaven as a bright shining star, and the clouds that it feeds off of and gives off miraculous wonders for art. uh, Not a lot of festivity going on right now, but even festivity, that is the receipt to the custom. Festivity to the feast, and in the feast with many drinks of all kinds of sorts. This is the receipt to a custom of this kind of church practice who comes in our houses and feast upon it. This is something that I also wanted to discuss if I don't get any further than just a YouTube video. A president being the majority of them that goes against the Constitution, the church practice, a divination, a Reiki, an idol movie, whatever. There should be festivity, and I say that the only reason you don't get festivity is so the people have no way out. They're dead, lazy, recluse. If it is said that it is a receipt to a custom, then the receipt to a custom should be held up, and perhaps in a rule of a king I don't know whose kingdom this is actually that who had did the livestock sacrifice, but in a kingdom of rule, perhaps it will happen if each choice king that does this, and perhaps the king that is over our head doesn't choose to have festivity for the practice of theft, and he is a thief. So I have no idea. But I thought I would report it. The people deserve to know that the law, being the biggest frenemy, it's not wise to call in all arguments, unless you absolutely have to, in all arguments between man and woman with children involved. They're after your youthful spirits, they're after your wellspring, they're hoping to uh, take all your childlike manners and turn you into an adult that can't brush the dirt off and play like a kid, man. You know? So I'm not I can't say that every law officer is awake and understands this much, but the majority of the union is dark. I know those fellas are awake. I don't work for them. They don't work for me. We don't work for each other.